So every now and then we try to do these mentor series events, which are essentially we bring in, we have a great group of mentors for the Amplify Accelerator that help our companies grow and give them advice and all this stuff and mentorship. We have them come and try to preach or give a little bit of their experiences to our community as well. So tonight, to start off 2013, we have Eli Portnoy, who is currently the GM of Scout Advertising at TeleNav, right? Cool. Eli was actually previously the CEO and founder of ThinkNear, which was a company that went through TechStars and Accelerator and then was acquired by TeleNav. So very excited to have him here to tell us his story and let him get started. Thanks again for coming, guys.
Thanks, guys. All right, so what I was hoping I would do today is talk to you a little bit about the experience we had from the day we started ThinkNear until the day we sold it, and some of the lessons we learned, because there were a lot of lessons. So one of the first days when we just started the company, it's actually exactly 2 years ago. So 2 years ago to the day, I left Amazon and we started ThinkNear, and about 2-3 days in, I'm having a really, really tough day. All of these big aspirations I had, all of these amazing thoughts and ideas and just dreams about what we were going to build just didn't seem so realistic anymore. And so I remember I tweeted out something like, startups are like roller coasters, except there are no seatbelts and people do fall out. And that's really what it felt like. There were ups and downs and all sorts of turns. We were very lucky, we didn't fall out. But hopefully some of these lessons that we learned might help you guys as you go through the process of building a company and maybe even act like seatbelts through your journey. So our story starts in TechStars. 2 days after we started the company, we flew across the country from Seattle to New York, and we land in TechStars and we start working on our idea. Now, at that point, we really had nothing more than a deck, a PowerPoint presentation that outlined a really bad idea. The idea was we wanted to build a console with a little button on it, and anytime a small business had slow period, they could go on this website, click on the button, and we would send them customers. That was the big idea, the big hypothesis, what we wanted to go out and build. And so we started pitching that idea to all of the mentors that kept coming in, and very, very quickly we realized it was a bad idea. We just kept getting constant negative feedback. I remember one particular case where Mark Schuster came, and his feedback was, your idea is asinine, stupid, and childish. And so that was the kind of feedback we were getting, but it was really informative and instrumental because it helped us very quickly start changing course and start finding out what really worked for us. So through the process, we're working through the nights, we're really trying to build out this idea and figure out what works and what doesn't. And we come up with an idea that's, hey, you know, it's not about giving them a button to go click on. Merchants don't have time to do that. What they really need is an automated solution. We need to go and figure out automatically when they're busy and when they're slow. And when they're slow, we'll automatically go and start sending them customers. So we really liked the idea, and we learned a bunch of lessons going through that process. And the first is, you gotta really stay humble and internalize the feedback you're getting. It's really, really easy to be dismissive of feedback that hurts, but it's way more important to really just be humble about it and take that feedback. Because if you don't, you'll stick with a bad idea. The second thing is, a lot of mentors came in and they had absolutely no idea about our industry or about the things that we were doing. But what they did have was pattern recognition. They'd seen a lot of different startups. And so it was really helpful just to get some broad perspectives about the major pitfalls that we might potentially fall into. And then the last thing is subject matter experts, the mentors, the occasional mentor that really did understand our business. Those guys were amazing because they helped us see like nuances and things that we just never would have seen ourselves in our industry and helped us really quickly calibrate and find the stuff that worked. So we've got our idea, we think we're really good. Demo day starts approaching and I go out and I start talking to investors. And so this is about 2-3 months into the program, and I start talking to one investor after another. Everyone says no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 50 investors, 50 no's. And at this point, again, we're a little bit nervous. But then one day I go and I meet with a venture firm called IA Ventures, and they say, yes, we're gonna lead you around. And all of a sudden we go from absolutely no investors to a lead investor, and by the end of the day, once they said yes, by the end of the day, we had raised the full 1.2 million we were trying to raise. And then by the next day, we had raised over $2 million, and we had to start cutting back and say, no, we can't take you guys. The lessons from that are, raising money is not a benchmark. because it takes a lot more no's than you get yeses. And up until the very second you get that first yes, you're a failure, and all of a sudden you're a success, and that's not really how it works. There's so much, when an investor starts thinking about investments, there's so many different criteria that fall into what they invest in and what they don't, that getting no's is just not a reflection of the business. You just gotta keep at it until an investor sees eye to eye with you, understands your vision, and then all of a sudden you're a hero. Second piece of advice is, once you are a hero, stay humble, because again, that one person who said yes could have easily said no, and the story would have been very different. So don't let it go to your head. So at this point, we raised a total of $1.6 million when it's all said and done. Program in New York ends, and we fly across the country again, and now we come to LA. And so we set up shop in LA. We sublet 2 tiny cubicles in someone else's office, and we start working, and we start putting our heads down and trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to take this idea and turn it into a business? And we start hiring. We hired 2 great people, and a recruiter, a really well-recognized recruiter in LA, calls us, and he says, hey, you guys gotta meet this guy, Ben. He's absolutely amazing. I didn't think we had a need for him. I thought he was too senior for us, but we said, okay, yeah, sure, come on in. And so Ben comes into the office, and we start talking to him and start discussing our idea, our business, selling him on the concept. And he falls in love with it, and he really wants to make it work, but he's just way too expensive. There's no way we can hire him. So we turn him down. We're very respectful. We really try hard to build a relationship out of it. And the reason I tell this story is because 6 months later, if you fast forward, Ben Pashman gets hired by a big company out in Chicago, and he calls me up and he says, hey, I'm in this new position, but I still love what you guys are doing, and I'd love for us to become partners. And so all of a sudden, this massive company that we'd never be able to get to is calling us and asking us to be partners. And so we start working with them, and they are now by far our biggest partner, the biggest source of our revenue, and just an unbelievable stroke of good luck. And so the lesson from that, at least for me, is recruiting is an opportunity to evangelize your message. And it's not just about hiring the person, it's about making sure that whenever you present your company, when you talk about your company, you present it in the best of lights. And it's never a waste of time to meet with people and talk about what you're doing. So we launch our product, and we go through all of the different steps to get the product launched, and we put it out there, and very, very quickly we realized we'd made a massive mistake. The idea is not going to work. And the reason the idea is not going to work is because in order to make the business function, we had too many different pieces that we needed to do really, really well. So expanding on what the initial idea was, what we wanted to do was we wanted to tell small businesses, sign up with us, and if you sign up with us, we'll automatically figure out when you're busy and when you're slow, and when you're slow, we'll automatically go and buy lots of ads across lots of different mobile channels and help drive customers into your business. The problem is, it's really, really hard to be good at lots of different things. You have to focus and be good at one thing. And what we were trying to do required us to be good at signing up merchants, building the algorithms to tell when they were busy and when they were slow, and then also going out and buying mobile ads to drive customers. And those are 3 big problems, and for a team of 4 people, that was really, really hard for us to do. In addition to that, buying mobile ads was something we thought would be really easy. Everyone was talking about how explosive the market was, how many different mobile ad vendors there were, but when we actually got down to it, it became really, really hard to do that. It was really hard to buy those ads. And so we had a big problem on our hands. We couldn't actually go and fulfill what we wanted to do. So we figure out that we need to change. We actually just can't accomplish what we wanted to do. And so we have a powwow. We rent a room, a conference room in Santa Monica, and the 4 of us get together in a room, and we say, guys, this is not working. We have 3 choices. We can give the money back and go find jobs. We can keep going at this and just hope that it starts to work. Or the third thing is we can sort of take a month and try to figure out what we've learned from this process and how we can evolve into something else. And we all felt that there was too much of an opportunity in the general space we were in, and we should just keep going, trying to figure out, take a month off, figure out what would work and what wouldn't, and then restart the company. And the reason we were able to do this is because throughout this process, we'd stayed incredibly lean. We only hired the 4 of us. We had a very, very inexpensive office. We didn't do parties. We didn't do anything that required us to spend money. So after the full launch and after spending a few months working on it, we still had 1.4 of the $1.6 million, which meant that we had the optionality and we could do that. So we went back to our investors and we said, hey guys, we're going to reset. We're taking a month to figure out what we're going to do. We'll get back to you in a month. They said, sure. And so we started moving on to the next. So the big lessons for me there are you got to stay lean until revenue starts hitting, because if you burn your money quickly, you just have no optionality if things don't work out, and they never work out the first time. The second is you can't have ego around your idea. What I've seen a lot of people do is they get very attached to their idea. And so when it comes time to make hard decisions, they're blinded by the fact that maybe the idea they came up with isn't the right idea. And so they keep going at it. And you just have to detach yourself and have no ego and really recognize whether your idea makes sense or not. Third thing is you have to react quickly. When the market is telling you one thing, you have to understand what the market is telling you, and you have to react. You have to listen and react, and that's just critical to do quickly. And then finally, and this is personally the biggest lesson, is business ideas, especially in the incubation stage, are all about focus. It's very, very hard to do one thing well. Try to pick ideas where you only have to do one thing well in order to succeed. If you have to do lots of different things, if there are lots of moving parts, it becomes really, really difficult operationally to make them work. So we start the process of figuring out what our new idea is going to be and evolving our business. And the first idea we had was, let's just focus on the algorithm part of our business. Let's just focus on automatically being able to tell, using a whole bunch of data, when a merchant is busy and when a merchant is slow. And we thought that idea had some legs because it's kind of cool. Like, we could look at weather and traffic and the time of day and automatically compute if Joe's Pizza was going to be busy or if they were going to have a need for customers. And we thought it was interesting and it was sexy, and there were all these VCs who told us that's awesome, that's big data, go for it. But we didn't really feel like there was a big market for it, and we didn't really know who our customers were. And so we decided to leave that one aside. The second business was really trying to solve the pain point we felt, which was when we tried to go and buy mobile ads, we had a really, really tough time buying those mobile ads because the infrastructure, the ecosystem wasn't mature enough. So not to get too in the details, but there are a lot of mobile ad networks and they sell ads. And you can go and you can buy ads from them. So if you want to target people using iOS, you can go to AdMob and say, hey, I want to buy 10,000 impressions, go show my ad to 10,000 people. But if you want to do that programmatically, meaning if you want to have an API that's doing the buying, there was no really good way to hook into a system that would go and buy those ads. And so to us, that was the opportunity. The opportunity was to build that layer that would help other startups like ours and other companies start to buy mobile ads in a programmatic fashion. And so we really liked this idea because it suited our strengths so well. We were all very back-end heavy rather than consumer-facing. We didn't have a great graphic design artist. We didn't have any of the front-end facing engineers. We were really just a back-end team, and so it made sense for us to focus on something that was back-end heavy. So we decided to focus on that idea. And so the first thing is find ideas that match your strengths. Figure out what you're good at, figure out the pieces that you can really contribute to, and then find ideas that help you leverage those strengths. And then the second idea, one of the things that we did once we decided to go after the mobile ad industry is we felt we needed to find experts, industry experts who had done ad tech before, who knew the industry well, and helped ramp us up quickly because we had no idea what we were doing in that industry. We knew there was a need because we felt it, but we had no idea how to go and solve it. So we went and we got two of the top advisors available to just help us ramp up quickly. So we've got our new idea. We're really excited. We spend the next 6 months building the product, and we launch it, and again, we have a big problem. Our problem is a little bit different this time. We have a great product, but this time we have no customers. We're 1 month into our V1. Our engineering team has spent the last 6 months just cranking away all hours of the day, all hours of the night. The product is ready, and me as a CEO, I'm tasked with selling it, and I cannot sell a thing. I'm going out there and I'm talking to advertisers right and left, 0 customers, 0 revenue. I looked a lot worse than this guy. And so at this point, we have a board meeting. So our board members fly into LA into our office. They're all excited because they want to get that update. What's going on? It's the first month. How's the business going? And I sit down and I start the meeting off by saying, guys, we have 0 sales. We have 0 revenue. There are 2 options here. One is, I either totally miscalculated what the market needed, or two, I'm not the right guy to be selling this. And so, starting off the meeting like that totally changed the tone of what I think would have been a very, very bad board meeting. If I had started off and come in and said, hey guys, things are amazing. We won't have revenue, but things are amazing, they would have dug really deep and tried to understand what happened and why, and they would have made the suggestions I made. By bringing the suggestions of myself, it gave me credibility in their eyes that I understood the problems, we understood what was going on, and we were taking the necessary steps to try and fix it. And so the conversation turned to them proposing a third alternative, which was, we need more patience. It's not that you're not the right guy to be selling this, it's not that you have the wrong product, it's just that we need a little bit more time. And so some of the lessons for me is, you gotta bring stuff up quickly, be transparent with your advisors, be transparent with your investors. They're there to help you. If they don't know what's going on, it's just gonna hurt you later on down the road, and they won't be able to help you when you need them. And the second thing is, just have some patience. Things never happen as quickly as you think they will, so just have a little patience. Anyway, my investors were right, because the very next day after the board meeting, BlackBerry called us and said, we want to buy $150,000 of your product. And the next day, eBay came and said, we want to buy $40,000 of your product. And the next day, Guitar Center came and said, we want to buy $10,000 of your product. And every day for the next 2 weeks, we got these massive, massive orders. And all of a sudden, we went from, we have no revenue, we have the wrong product, we have the wrong CEO, to, we're killing it. And so it was a really, really awesome, awesome feeling. But in startup worlds, the awesome feelings don't last all that long. We stopped sleeping, because we were a team of 4, handling accounts for some of the biggest companies, running incredible amounts of revenues through our system, and everything was breaking. We were just literally not sleeping. We were in the office at 7 in the morning. We were not home till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. It was really, really brutal, really, really tough. And also the system wasn't meant to handle that kind of volume on day one. So the engineers were also just in the office trying to plug everything in and try to keep it from collapsing on us while we had these paying customers. And I mean, those were some hard periods of time. But fortunately, we had the money in the bank and we started hiring and recruiting aggressively. And one of the big takeaways one of our advisors told us was, I know you guys need someone right now, but the pain of hiring someone wrong right now is much worse than not hiring someone. And so we took our time, we were very, very diligent, and we really focused on hiring the right people and people who could grow with us. And so we started the beginnings of what ended up becoming a really exceptional team. But it caused us a lot of pain because it wasn't as fast and it wasn't as easy as just hiring anyone who could help us plug the holes in right then and there. So, some of the key lessons for me is scaling is really hard. It brings about all sorts of challenges. Sleep can wait. When you have an opportunity where things are really just working, it's okay not to sleep for a little bit of time, although you age a lot faster that way. Then the other thing is just hire the very, very best people you can. It never makes sense to hire second-tier talent, and that goes at every stage of the company. Just always hire the absolute best people you can. So we're hiring, we're growing the team, we're getting the pieces in place to actually build this business, and our clients start reporting that they're really happy. And they're not happy because the product is working so well, they're happy because we did one thing really well, and that's customer service. Every single day, no matter what they needed, no matter what time, we were always responsive. We bent over backwards, we did anything we could, whether it was build new features for them or stay up till 11 o'clock at night, or we can tell you examples after examples. Our customers were the only thing that mattered to us during those moments. And so all of a sudden, the agencies that were sending us customers started sending us more. And literally in the span of 4 months, we started having clients, Toyota, McDonald's, GNC, Exxon, Reebok. The list of who's who started calling us, and they were being referred, and they were coming through lots of different avenues. Yes, the product has to work, but if you don't have the right support system and the right infrastructure around that product, it's just not going to make a difference. Because ultimately, the people who make the decisions, at least in our industry, cared about customer service, and so we delivered that. So some of the lessons for me is, once you have customers, you have to focus all of your efforts on satisfying them and keeping them happy. And then the last thing is, the first customer is always the hardest. It's like the VC. The first VC is the hardest. Everyone after that is just much, much, much easier. So it's really, really important to stay patient, find that first customer, and then life gets a lot easier. And so business is going well, we're excited, we've got the team in place, we've got money flowing through the system, we've got great advertisers, and we say, well, it's time to do another round of financing. So we start going to investors, and we start seeing a similar story play out, which is no, 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 no. And then finally we get to that yes, and all of a sudden the whole round comes together, and we start getting ready to sign the term sheet. We sign it, we start getting ready to sign the closing docs, and somewhere in between there, TeleNav calls us and says, hey, we read some article you guys wrote, we'd love to run a campaign with you. So again, we run a campaign for them, and at this point we don't really think they're a big possibility to spend a lot of money with us, but we treat every customer as if they're our first and last, and they like what they see, and 2 days before we're going to sign our closing docs with our investors, they send us an LOI, a letter of intent. Basically, they tell us they want to buy us. And yeah, so that's what I did, by the way. We were very excited. So a lot of times you hear that the transaction happens like overnight. It doesn't. It takes a few months. It's very difficult. It's hard. Diligence takes a long time. The negotiations take a long time. Fortunately, we got through it, and now we are incredibly excited to be part of TeleNav. They've been an amazing partner, and the way we think about it is the first 2 years of building the company were like the first inning of a ball game. We started off, we hit a nice home run, and now we've got 8 innings where we're going to keep hitting home runs and trying to build out a really great business. So it's been an amazing journey, really, really exciting, and these are some of the big lessons I learned from our time building out ThinkNear. And if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to talk about it.
Has your business model changed any now that you're owned by TeleNav? Have you seen any changes since then? I know it's fairly recent.
So the business model hasn't changed. What has changed is the resources we have available. So our thinking up until the acquisition was always, we've got X number of dollars in the bank, and so we're going to prioritize and only do the top 3 or 4 things in our roadmap, or we're not going to do this even though it could generate revenue because we won't have the resources behind us. All of a sudden we have a really big company with a really big balance sheet that's telling us to go and do everything we want to do, and so a lot of things we never would have done before we can start doing now, like hiring way more aggressively, getting a huge office that probably is 10 times too big for us, and all sorts of other things that make our team happy and make me happy, but that weren't possible as a startup. Sure.
Why did you choose to sell or raise another round?
Yeah, it's a good question. So when we sort of thought about the economics and the implications of selling versus going out it alone, we looked at the marketplace. And the marketplace at this point has some pretty established players. You've got Millennial Media, you've got Google, who owns AdMob, and you've got IAS through Apple. And we know our product is better, we know our offering is better, and we know we have a stronger core team. What we didn't have was the money to go after them, and it felt like raising $5 million would have been good, but it wouldn't have been enough to go out and become the market leader, whereas we saw TeleNav with their $200 million in the bank as a potential, essentially, massive investment, massive influx. And thus, it was more about building the company than it was about trying to build our little thing. We wanted to build something massive, and that was just a lot easier with the resources they brought to the table. Sure.
You mentioned a recruiter. How much have you relied on recruiters for hiring, and how do you justify the cost?
It's a great question. So when we started the company, I was very reluctant to use recruiters. I felt that it's a very wasteful thing, and it was hard for me to justify spending $30,000 to hire someone when we were spending $700 a month on an office. But the more we went through the process of building the company, the more we realized that hiring the best people is exponentially more valuable than any cost to actually get them. And so when we looked at the stats and the metrics around what we were able to hire ourselves, we realized we weren't hiring fast enough and we weren't getting enough of the great resumes. And so that's when we started getting more comfortable with recruiters. In total, we hired 3 people out of the 13 people we were at the time of closing through recruiters. So not a huge chunk, but a pretty decent one. Sure.
Thank you for your story. It's really exciting.
Sure. Thank you.
I think it should be like a reality show, all of us, I'll be the star. But anyway, I want to know, how can you tell if your company is going to be, if it is scalable? And did you use like some type of formula, or is there like some organization that, determines that? How did you figure that out?
So you're asking, how do we know if like we can grow it into something big or if it's like a niche idea?
Right.
Yeah, so it's more science than it is, more art than it is science. There are a bunch of things you can do. So we spoke with a bunch of our potential customers and we tried to get a sense for, how much they would spend, and we tried to look at how many potential customers there might be. But ultimately, it's very hard to get real concrete answers from someone when you ask them, would you buy this? As opposed to when you go and say, give me a check. There's a massive disconnect. So there is no great way. You just have to believe, based on all the evidence you can collect and all the information you can collect, that there is an opportunity, and that if you execute and do well, that there will be a lot of customers. But there's no magic formula that I found.
Did you do that before you went to your investors, or afterwards, or both?
Well, the first time we did it before, because we were trying to get them to give us cash.
Right.
And so they were a lot more stringent in what they were looking for. The second time around, we were just letting them know of our change of direction, and we felt that we had enough proof points, just based on the fact that we'd suffered through the pain point that we were trying to solve, that we didn't need to go and validate the market. That may have been a mistake, but sometimes if you're not forced to do something, you don't do it, and so we didn't do it. Sure.
Thank you.
What role did TechStars play in your success?
It was a pretty big role, so I don't think we would have gotten nearly as far as we did, as quickly as we did without TechStars. So there were a few things that they did that were massively helpful. The first is just our network grew exponentially. So when I talked about the 50 investors we spoke to, if we hadn't been part of TechStars, hitting up 50 investors would have taken me between 6 months and a year. So all of a sudden we were able to condense that and do it in a month. So that shaved a full year off the schedule. The second thing is they helped us figure out what idea we should go with much faster than if we had done it on our own. We were talking to mentors every single day. We were getting feedback on the idea. We were getting introduced to potential customers and partners. So everything was expedited. And then the last thing is, once we launched, we had a platform. We weren't just another startup. We were a startup that was coming out of TechStars or Amplifier. It just gave us validity. And so when we talked to reporters, when we talked to recruits, we had a platform on which to launch. And so that was very helpful.
You kind of glazed over in the beginning because it sounded like you just kind of had an idea and you walked into TechStars, they were like, come on in, join the program kind of thing. But I'm kind of in a position with my co-founder where we're developing a product and everything we do is just to get into an accelerator. So for us, that's kind of like the big milestone. So was there anything that you did, or I guess any tips or anything that you thought contributed to getting into TechStars? Because it's pretty competitive.
It's really competitive. Yeah. So the backstory is, when I was at Amazon about a year in, I started getting the itch to start a company. And I have a family. I have a wife, 2 kids, and it was very hard for me to just leave Amazon and start working on an idea. So every morning I would wake up at 5 before my kids woke up, and I would start working on the idea, and I started buying books on the different subject matters I was interested in, and then at night, 7:30, once they were asleep, again, I would spend another 3 hours trying to put it together, trying to get data. And one of the things that I was lucky about is my roommate back in college was a venture capital investor who had some ties to TechStars, and so every time I would collect things, I would do things, I would send him little updates, and he would feed them to TechStars. And what ended up happening is TechStars wasn't really looking to find ideas that were going to be huge. They were looking to find teams that were going to be huge. And the way they judged teams was by seeing the progress they made within the constraints they had. And so just working really, really hard to make continuous progress and reporting that to the accelerator you're looking to apply will go much, much farther than any actual real tangible product traction or anything like that. Because ultimately, what they're looking to do is they're looking to invest in you. They know that a huge chunk of the companies that go through accelerators end up changing ideas just like we did. And so what they're looking for are people who they feel like they should back. And so you want to give them comfort that you're one of those teams.
Can you talk a little bit about the background of your founding team and how you found them?
Sure. So after business school, I went to Amazon and I spent a couple of years there. And I mentioned that about a year in, I knew that I wanted to start looking for an idea, and so as part of that, I started looking for a co-founder. And so I let it be known pretty widely within Amazon that I was looking for a technical co-founder. And John, my co-founder, was also at Amazon, also had a startup pitch, and also was letting it known pretty widely that he was interested in an idea. And at some point, a mutual friend put us in touch. But the big lesson there for me is if you guys are looking to start a company and you're looking for a business founder or a technical founder, the best way to find them is to work with them. And so I would look for the absolute best company you can, where the best employees are, and you can network and find that partner that ends up being a huge, huge, huge part of the success of the business.
How long did it take from the idea inception to being sent to a TechStars?
So I'd say we started working on the idea 6 months before TechStars, but the idea went through a lot of change. I think by the time we had the idea we applied to TechStars with, it was probably a gap of about 3 months.
What is the name of, or the category of your venture, the business category specifically?
Sure. So we're in ad tech. That means that we help advertisers with some of the technology needed to serve ads.
And is there like a list of all of the different technology categories for startups? I know that's a dumb question.
No. So probably the best resource is Crunchbase, crunchbase.com. You'll see a whole collection of different startups and categories and types, and it might be a good place to look at stuff.
Do you see yourselves going and doing it again, doing more scale-up, and if so, is it anything
Yeah, so my official answer there is I absolutely love TeleNav. I'm really excited to keep building the team and building the company and doing that. The reality is that I think an entrepreneur typically has a life cycle of between 2 and 5 years. And so I think probably in 3 to 4 years, I'll start thinking about another idea.
That was going to be my next question. What's your exit strategy?
Well, I mean, we exited.
Huh?
We already exited, so we were acquired. Yeah.
Oh, so you don't have any connection with the company anymore?
No, like my personal exit strategy?
Okay, so.
How you plan to leave the company?
I'm not planning on leaving, not for a while. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're having a great time. We're building something really special. So it's gonna be good.
Kind of a soft double question. Have you heard of the B Corp? And it's a B Corporation? No, so just the second part being, do you take into account like the social and ecological component to purchase decisions or hiring trends or the way they operate, kind of the ethos of your business? And do you see that in other places? And if not, why not?
So I have not heard of the B Corp. What is it, by the way?
They're kind of like a legitimacy stamp that says we think about the triple bottom line. If you're at the boardroom trying to make decisions, it's okay to say, is the environment being considered first and foremost with this strategy,
Right.
et cetera, and also social responsibility, sociocultural impact.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think it's something that every CEO needs to be thinking about in terms of the place of the company within the broader context of what we do as humanity. My previous business actually had a triple bottom line. It was a recruiting service for low-wage labor, and it was all about helping them find work. And one of the things I learned is that in business, it's hard enough to manage one bottom line. It's incredibly hard to manage 3. And so one of the personal decisions I made was I was going to focus on one bottom line, and I was going to focus my free time on other bottom lines and sort of split them up and separate them. And so that's the way I've handled it. That doesn't mean that we're not interested in the way our company is positioned within the broader ecosystem, but it's just in terms of our mission statement, it is about building a business.
I have a question. How did you know that you're actually going to solve the problem with the algorithms you applied to the ad system? Did you have any idea? Did you have just intuition, or anybody assured you that the solution is possible, mathematically speaking, or otherwise?
I'd love to say yes, but the answer is no. We took some leaps of faith that we could do something that hadn't been done before.
So how you convinced your investors that this is the right path without like giving them like an absolute answer that this thing is indeed possible?
Our backgrounds. I think it comes down to when you can't prove something, they look for historical evidence.
Do you, what kind of backgrounds do you have, like mathematics backgrounds or?
Yeah, so my co-founder did, or does. He done a bunch of work in the payment systems at Amazon, building a lot of the deep technology there, so that helped.
Are there any thought leaders in the ad tech space that you follow that you recommend as kind of people to keep an eye on?
Yeah, there are a lot. So I would start off with looking at adexchanger.com. That's a great publication, and Street Fight Mag, which is another great publication. In terms of like people who are doing interesting things, there's Duncan McCall at Place IQ. He's pretty awesome. There's Stu Wall at Signpost. Who else? Yeah, I would say those two are probably some of the smartest people in ad tech, and they're worth following. There's also Mark Thierman, who from AdMeld, who got a great blog.
Sorry, Stuart
Wall.
Thanks.
Yeah.
How involved were your investors on decision making? Did they give you a lot of leniency, or did you pretty much just like, did they give you the money and say, okay, here you go? Or?
Yeah, I think most investors would rather not be too involved. They tend to get more involved when things aren't going the way they want them to. So it was pretty like, it wasn't even. So when things were going fine at the very beginning, we didn't see much of them. When we started to have some challenges, we saw a lot more of them. When things started to go really well again, they backed off again. And then when the acquisition offer came, they really didn't want us to sell. And so all of a sudden they were very involved again. So it really matters. It doesn't always stay the same. It's dependent on how the company's doing.
So what would you do differently with your next time?
What would I do differently? That's a good question. Probably I would apply a lot of the lessons I've learned earlier on. So I'd be a lot more humble. I'd be a lot more willing to listen to feedback. I think the other thing that was really important for us, and one of the big lessons learned, was hire really, really strong people, and maybe I would have overhired a little bit early on to avoid some of the scalability issues we had. So it's a fine balance. I think we maybe were a little bit too lean. It's good to be lean, but maybe we're a little bit too lean.
Given the competitive landscape, what would you attribute your early customers and why they chose your technology over other solutions out there in the market?
It's a really interesting question because I think the answer is not intuitive. So when we started reaching out to customers, we had no idea how to sell media. Media is a very different type of sale. It's not like, I mean, I've sold software, I've sold a couple of other things. Selling like media advertising is just totally different. And most of the people selling it don't really sell the way I was going out and selling it. They were professional salespeople. They knew exactly how to, work the funnel and get a sale. And we were selling it very much like you would sell software. Like we were coming in with a deep product focus. We were talking to them in a language that they weren't used to hearing. And I think our early customers gravitated towards a different type of sale. And so I think it was less about our product, and I think it was less about anything other than they were intrigued by these weirdos who were trying to sell them something totally differently. Once that happened, though, we started to understand how to sell to them better, and that opened up the market because initially there were only a few people who were excited about different kind of sales. But we started building the product, we started figuring out how to communicate the product advantages, and then it started becoming much more about the product and about our offering.
What were you doing at Amazon?
I was a product manager, so I don't know if anyone's used the Prime Instant Video, the free videos, I was working on that.
Ultimately, when you made that last pivot, changing what the business focused on, I'm just wondering about the product itself. Were there certain kind of ads, mobile ads that you were delivering? Like, I know there's a different variety of them, and also, were you serving leads yourself? Did you have your own SDK, or were you kind of selling them through different ad networks?
Yeah, so I didn't want to get too detailed into exactly what our technology looked like because it's going to bore most people. It bores me, frankly. But the way our technology is set up is as a DSP. So we're actually going out and integrating with a bunch of exchanges and buying that inventory in real time and serving it ourselves. So we built the full end-to-end stack to be able to do this. Sure.
I want to get my $10 worth. Could you give us a glimpse into the day in the life of TechStar and you and your interaction and involvement and mentors and just, how was it? Like, how much involvement did other people have with you?
Sure. So a typical day at TechStars for us was I was in about 8 in the morning. First 2 hours, it was pretty quiet in the office, so I just worked through email, figured out who I was trying to reach out to, who I needed to answer. At about 10 o'clock, we had our first mentor meeting that usually lasted about an hour. Then we had another mentor meeting. Then
What's a mentor meeting?
It's basically a mentor who comes in and hears about your business, tries to give you feedback, advice, helps you out in some way or another. Then maybe a quick lunch at my desk, then another 3 or 4 mentor meetings. So typically we had between 5 and 6. And then the night was just going out and sending out all of the emails I needed to send out, doing all of the sales calls I needed to do, pitching as much as I could, and it was pretty intense. So one of the interesting later on when I was just doing it during the day.
Wow.
So, why do you think TeleNav decided that they wanted to buy your company? Was it because of the technology that you had? Was it the team that you had constructed? Or was it because of the relationships that you had built with some of your customers? And the second question to that, if you were to build a startup again, would you follow that same strategy? Or would you, like if they bought you because of your technology, maybe next time around you try and sell contracts or something along those lines? What do you think?
So I think it would be too early for them to buy us because of our contracts or our relationships. We're talking about 6 months of revenue, so it wasn't. There were easier ways to buy clients. They were really buying us because of the team and the technology. So they were really excited about what we'd accomplished in a very short amount of time. And TeleNav has an ads team, but they were really looking to supercharge it, and they felt that by injecting our team into their group, we could do more faster. And then they also thought that the technology we built would be a great addition, very synergetic to some of the things they were doing. So I don't think I would change things around next time. I think ultimately as a company, you have to focus on team first, product second, and customer relationships third. And that's probably the way you're going to be valued too.
Will you be operating out in the LA area?
Yeah, so we're moving into a big, nice office with lots of extra space in, Overland and Jefferson. And so we're recruiting pretty heavily to fill that out, and we're hoping that having another big company in LA, another big tech company in LA will be good. And a lot of the people we bring in come from outside of LA, which is good to just keep feeding the ecosystem. Do you have a follow-up?
Follow-up question.
Sure.
How integrated will you be with TeleNav? Will it be a challenge to be operating in Southern California versus Northern California?
Well, I'm up there every week, so I'm up there at least once, if not 2 days a week, and just generally the team travels pretty frequently. So it's a little bit more challenging than if we were in the same city, but there's also a benefit to having 2 different offices and 2 different pools of recruits and all sorts of different advantages.
How'd you figure out what to charge for your software? Is it something you got right the first time, or did you have to kind of do some pivots on how you were going to charge?
Yeah, we got it wrong a lot of times. So we started off by basically calling competitors and trying to figure out what they charge, and then we would undercut them by a little bit. And when people said no, we would undercut them by a little bit more and more and more until we finally found something that they said yes to, and then we started raising the price back up. So there was no science to it. We just needed that revenue. And you've got something, right? Yeah.
So my startup is in the local space, and it's really possible to scale. And we're actually trying to travel the ed tech space as well to validate some assumptions. But so I noticed that one of the customers for you was McDonald's. So the toughest thing for a startup like ours is to reach out to these big brands, right? So you mentioned agencies sending you customers. Can you go into a little details about that? And what about, do you have any specific tips about marketing, reaching the right people to
Yeah. So the way advertising is bought is really interesting. The companies have a big budget and they say we want to spend $10 million on advertising, and then they hire an agency who then goes and figures out where they're going to place the money. So going to McDonald's directly is going to be pretty futile. They're not going to spend the money. They're not going to want to talk to you. It's just not their job, and so they're going to be very quick to brush you off. What they might do if they really like you is they'll pass you on to the agency. So you're really better off figuring out. It's pretty easy. There's a lot of information out online about which agency represents which company. And so you go to the agency and you email them and you call them and you send them gifts and you do whatever you can to get in front of them. But they're the ones who control the budget. And once you can get into an agency, it's pretty easy to get them to test budget with you.
Even as a startup?
Yeah, they have budget specifically set aside to try with new technologies. So this is why I think it's really important to get advisors who have vertical expertise, because every industry has its own nuances, and knowing those nuances makes such a big difference. And so just one advisor who knows your industry well can just help you take such shortcuts in your business, because there was no way we would have known that. But we had an advisor who all he did, he was this chief revenue officer for a big media company, and all he did was sell advertising. And he told us, he said, this is the map of who you need to go after, and this is how you need to go after them, and now go do it. And so when you have a plan, it's a lot easier to go do it rather than trying to figure out who the buyer is, how they buy, who's making the decisions, all that stuff. 1, 2. Oh, we'll start. And then, yeah.
So usually companies that receive a purchase offer, when they decline it, the offer tends to go up, and in some cases, maybe it disappears, but it's rarely the case, it seems like. Were you tempted to hold off?
Well, we did hold off, but next time maybe you'll help us with negotiations. We held up a little bit, but we weren't as aggressive as we could have been, but it's also because they came in pretty aggressively. So we did validate the number we got with a few third parties, a few bankers, other people who had insight into what the market would bear, and I also knew most of the other potential acquirers, so I did check in with them, and ultimately we thought TeleNav's offer was good, but we definitely could have played harder. Sorry, I think you had a question, right?
Could you talk about the company culture during the startup phase and then how it's changed since you've been acquired?
Yeah, so for the real answer, you probably want to talk to Michelle and Jacqueline and Mikey and a few others in Lane who are part of the company, and they're sitting right over there. But I'll give you my perspective on it. So there were a few things that we cared deeply about. So we wanted people who were really, really smart, lots of horsepower, and very ambitious and motivated. So we had a very motivated team who cared deeply about the business. But we also wanted to find people who were nice, we all got along with, and could stop working on a split second and play Halo, or stop working and beer pong or whatever it is. So we have a culture that's intense when we're working, but all the time we're having breaks and we're doing all sorts of different things that are very playful and build a lot of camaraderie. Because to me, it's one of the things about working is that you do it for a lot of hours a day, and if you don't enjoy the people you do it with, and if you can't just sort of take a break and know that people will take a break with you, it's not that much fun. So.
Now that you're not a startup anymore, do you actually advise other startups yourself personally?
So I unfortunately, or fortunately, am really, really bogged down now with since the acquisition, running the team. But I'm definitely always ready to help startups and advise them. I tend to, so how do I phrase this? I tend to work with a limited number of startups just because I want to be able to really contribute and help. And so if on a recurring basis, I can only do about 3 to 5 startups at a time, but I'm always happy to have conversations on a one-off basis with startups and help them, because we had a ton of help. And I'm a mentor here. I'm going to stop by and help out the companies I've stopped by before, and definitely always accessible and reachable. But to have that meaningful, deep advisor relationship, it's hard to do more than 3 or 5.
Okay. Thanks again for coming.